Welcome to another Sunday at Heartway at Home. I just wanted to share how much I love this beautifully diverse community, and I am so glad to be a part of it. If this is your first time here, you're probably tuning in through our YouTube channel, Facebook page, or the podcast, and I definitely think you should subscribe, put a thumbs up after the message, and I hope you enjoy.
The atmosphere is changing now, for the Spirit of the Lord is here. The evidence is all around that the Spirit of the Lord is here. The atmosphere is changing now, for the Spirit of the Lord is here. The evidence is all around that the Spirit of the Lord is here. Overflow in this place. Fill our hearts with your love. Your love surrounds us. You're the reason we came to encounter your love. Your love surrounds us. The atmosphere is changing now, for the Spirit of the Lord is here. The evidence is all around that the Spirit of the Lord is here. Overflow in this place. Fill our hearts with your love. Your love surrounds us. You're the reason we came to encounter your love. Your love surrounds us. Overflow in this place. Fill our hearts with your love. Your love surrounds us. You're the reason we came to encounter your love. Your love surrounds us. We sing Spirit of God. Spirit of God, fall fresh on us. We need your presence. Your kingdom come, your will be done here as in heaven. Spirit of God, fall fresh on us. We need overflow in this place. Fill our hearts with your love. Your love surrounds us. You're the reason we came to encounter your love. Your love surrounds us. Llena este lugar, derramando tu amor me envuelve. He venido por ti a tus brazos de amor, tu amor me envuelve. Llena este lugar, derramando tu amor me envuelve. He venido por ti a tus brazos de amor, tu amor me envuelve. Que tu poder descienda hoy, venga tu reino, que se haga aquí tu voluntad como en el cielo. Spirit of God, fall fresh on us. We need your presence. Your kingdom come, your will be done here as in heaven. Surrounded by your love, Jesus. Let's sing Spirit of God. Spirit of God, fall fresh on us. We need your presence. Your kingdom come, your will be done here as in heaven. Spirit of God, fall fresh on us. We need your presence. Your kingdom come, your will be done here as in heaven.
Happy Sunday, my beautiful Heartway family. I am so excited to share in this moment of centering prayer with each and every one of you. You know, centering prayer has been such a beautiful tool to bring me back home to myself and to God, really. So that makes me extra excited to share in this moment with you because it has made such an impact in my life. It has truly changed the course of my life. You know, for a lot of my life, I have dealt with a lot of depression, anxiety, stress, and I have been able to use meditation almost as a secret power to just come to this place of peace, come to this place back to myself where I can experience God's beautiful, true presence and peace. So I want to invite you to make this practice more than just a one time a week thing. Make it a daily practice. Practice meditation as many times throughout your week as you can, because it does beautiful things. It truly is one of the most beautiful ways to experience God in our lives. I actually came across this verse this week that I wanted to share with you all. It's John 15:4, and it says, "Abide in me and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me." And this just had me thinking, because one, I love the garden. The garden is such a beautiful symbol, a beautiful way of me remembering God. But this verse spoke to me especially because it's a reminder how important meditation is in our lives, how important it is for us to come to God, because it is only alongside of God, with God in our hearts, that we can bear that fruit, that we can see our gardens flourish. And it's not overnight. So I want to remind you that meditation is a journey. It's not an overnight thing where you're suddenly gonna become this master. I want to remind you that there is no end point to this. The only end point is to access peace, to access God, to access wholeness and love. That's all within you. It's just coming to that place of silence. It's knowing that God is beyond words. God is beyond movement. God is the very nature within us. God is love. So as we start a time today, I want us to get into a comfortable position. If you feel comfortable, I want to ask you to close your eyes. And then if you feel like you want to receive, I'm going to ask you to bring your hands up. If you feel like you need to be grounded, I'm going to ask you to put your hands down. We're going to start off with 3 deep breaths. In this very moment, if you feel ready for it, I want to ask you to invite God in. Invite love into your heart. I want to remind you that you are love, and God's presence is available to you at any moment. When thoughts arise, I want you to think of your thoughts like clouds. Watch them come, watch them go, but don't identify with them. Know that your thoughts, they are okay, but they are not who you are. Oftentimes we feel as if God is so far away, but God is within each and every one of us. God is as close as your breath. God seeks you daily, at every moment. The only way that we can access God is through stillness, is through silence, because it is through this silence that we can hear God's words. One of our hardest journeys in life is getting out of our heads. We must learn to live from our soul, from our hearts, because it is only then that we can experience true peace. Know that God extends His love to each and every person. We are all so worthy of God's love. silence is okay. Silence isn't empty. Silence is full of God's treasures. At any moment in time, this peace is available to you. God is always waiting with open arms. And I want to take this moment to remind you how loved you are, how worthy you are, how important you are, how whole you are. You don't need anything but God. All of the answers that we're searching for are right here within us. We are co-creators with God. We are here on this earth to spread God's love, spread God's light that is within you. Never forget that. Take 3 deep breaths together. Exhale. Another one. One more. Whenever you feel ready, I ask that you gently open your eyes. I want to thank you all so much for joining me in this beautiful time of centering prayer together. Remember, meditation is not a sprint. It is a marathon, something we have to continuously practice. God is always there waiting with us with open arms. I love you all so much. Have an amazing week.
Hey everybody, thanks for being with us this morning. First of all, I want to say I miss each and every one of you tremendously. We so wish that we could be gathered together in person again. But for now, we must continue to do Heartway at home, which is a good thing because we've received so much positive feedback from a lot of you about the way that Heartway at home has been impacting you during this time. And so many of you have been sharing our YouTube and Facebook links with all of your family and friends from all over the place. So it's been fun to be able to expand the family and reach new people. But just know that we miss you. And we're looking forward to the day when we can be together again. Until then, let's continue to stay connected. I want to encourage you to be faithful and to show up and to take part in the community that we are seeking to build during this time. So if you're not connected with us yet through social media, make sure to do so that you can get up-to-date information about all of the outreach events and different things that we'll be putting together in the next couple of weeks. For today, though, I want to spend just a few moments to share with you about the interconnectedness of life. One of the foundational Christian teachings about the nature of God is that God's essence is relational. God is relationship. And what I mean by that is God doesn't just create things. God lives in and through that which God creates. So God can be seen as the animating force of the universe, the soul of the universe. God is the life-giving energy that exists in and with and through all things, holding everything together in love. When the earliest Christians were looking for images, symbols, metaphors to talk about this relational mystery at the heart of God's existence, they used the image of God as a dancer, which I think is fascinating imagery, which, by the way, symbol, metaphor is the only language that we ever have to talk about God, which is why Jesus spoke in parables, because God is infinitely beyond our ability to understand. And so we're only ever hinting and pointing to a greater mystery than that which we can fully comprehend. With all that being said, the imagery that the earliest Christians chose, one of the many images, was of God as a dancer. The earliest church fathers used a particular Greek word, perichoresis, to describe this mystery. Peri means around, and choresis, which we get the word choreography from, means to dance. So to dance around. God is a circle dance. What they intended to say by this is that whatever it is that is happening within God and reality, which are the same thing, whatever's happening within God is a flow, a radical relatedness, a communion that exists within God, which is why we say God is love. Now, here's what I particularly love about the imagery of God as a dancer. See, when it comes to dance, I've never been a dancer myself. I wish I could dance. If I can trade in a talent for another talent, I would switch something with the ability to dance. But TMI. What I'm trying to say is, when it comes to dance, the dancer and the dance are one. Okay? So when a poet writes a poem, the poet is separate from the poetry. When a painter paints something, that artist, that painter is separate from their painting. Okay? When a photographer takes a picture, the photographer is separate from their photography. But when it comes to dance, the dancer and the dancer are one. They cannot be separated. So everything that emanates from God is included in this dance, included in this flow. So God is the dancer, and the universe is God's dance. And the dancer and the dance are one. A beautiful mystery for us to reflect on. Now, when it comes to dancing, the Bible doesn't say too much about it. But we do have one story in the Hebrew Scriptures about a man who danced. And his name was David, who was the king of Israel. And back in those times, the people of Israel had built something called the Ark of the Covenant. This was basically a really big wooden chest that was covered in gold, and within the chest was contained the 2 tablets in which the 10 commandments were written. So the Ark of the Covenant was considered to be very holy, very sacred. For the people of Israel, this was a representation of God's presence among the people. This is where God's presence dwelt, and they treated it as such. Well, there was a point in time when David was king that the Ark of the Covenant was taken from the people of Israel by an opposing army. When this happened, chaos ensued and the people were mourning and there was a lot of sadness in the land. Finally, one day when the people of Israel were finally able to get back the Ark of the Covenant and bring it back home, there was a huge celebration in the land. And King David decided to join in on this celebration by dancing. He didn't just dance, though. A very odd note to make about this story is that the story says David was dancing without any clothes on, which is quite funny, but it's an important detail to this story. Because there were people who were watching David dance. The scriptures say that David was dancing before God with all of his might. So David was losing himself in this moment, in this dance, in this flow with God. By the way, when I was younger, I've always been fascinated by people who are just like able to dance and not care at all about who's watching. Have you ever come across people like that? People who just decide to dance out of nowhere and they look kind of funny, but they don't care that they look that way. They are just doing their thing. Well, when I was younger, I used to go to Sawgrass Mills Mall every Friday night to watch movies and hang out with my friends. And when I used to go there to Sawgrass, there was a young man who, like clockwork, every Friday night, he was there. He would hang out next to like kind of where the goths were near the movie theater. For some reason, there was a bunch of goths when I would walk down the Oasis, they called it, back in those days. And this guy was there. I remember it clear as day. And he had headphones on. He would only listen to Michael Jackson. And he would just dance. And people would gather around him. And sometimes people would just ignore him. And he was just there by himself dancing. But I would come up to him and talk to him because I was so fascinated by the fact that this man just did not care. And he was so into his MJ moves. And I happen to love MJ too. That kind of exuberant, joy-filled, carefree dancing is how I envision David during this moment. Dancing before God with all of his might. Well, there were people in that time who, when they saw David doing this, criticized him because they believed that dancing in this way, especially without any of your clothes on, was beneath the dignity of the king. And yet, in spite of this, David continued to dance. And David owned up to his actions because this dancing for David was an expression of his freedom in the presence of God. This freedom in God's presence is what you and I were created for. We were created. We exist for the very sake of experiencing peace and joy and happiness in the presence of God. When you are able to merge with love and lose yourself in God's presence, all of your life becomes a dance between you and the divine, and you don't care who is watching. You are just flowing, moving in harmony with God, doing what it is that God has called you to do, being who it is that God has created you to be, with full acceptance, with no shame. What a way to live. So if life can be thought of as a dance, then that means life is not static. Life is not wooden. Life is not rigid. Life could be better understood as an unfolding process. Life is something that is always in motion, always changing, always moving somewhere. So I like to think about life like a river. Rivers flow in one direction. Okay, you and I are in this river of life, reality. You and I, being in this river that is flowing in one direction, have one of two choices. We can either swim against the river, or we can flow with the river. To swim against the river is to create suffering for ourselves. There's this one teacher who says, every time you argue with reality, you lose, but only 100% of the time. That too has been my experience. When you resist life, when you refuse to live life with an open-hearted acceptance of whatever it is that arises in the present moment, you begin to inflict suffering on yourself, because resistance creates suffering. Acceptance, on the other hand, brings peace. Now, here's the thing. All of us are going down the river. So the wise thing to do is to enjoy the ride. And that's really what life is all about. It's letting go of our will and turning everything over to God's will. This doesn't mean that things are going to be easy. It simply means that now we choose to work with life as it is. Now, another thing to recognize is that if life is not static, then neither are the stories we tell ourselves about our life. See, there's a distinction to be made between life and the stories we tell ourselves about life, the events of our lives and the thoughts that we have about our life. Those two things are distinct. What humans do best is tell stories. We tell ourselves stories about everything, and those stories become the prisms through which we interpret all of reality. Well, when those stories are based in fear, when those stories come from a place of pain, when we are interpreting the present through the prism of the past, those stories are bound to keep us trapped and disempowered. We tell ourselves things like, life is not fair. Nobody loves me. I've made too many mistakes. I'll never be successful in the future. My life has no purpose. People can't be trusted. Whatever the story is, here's what you need to know. All of those stories are flexible. They can be changed. They're not static. They're not wooden. When you believe those stories, they become absolute truth to you. But when you take a step back from those stories, you recognize that they're simply stories, and all of our stories about life can be reframed in such a way that they are aligned with the truth of God's providence. But the only way that that can happen is when you realize that your life isn't really your life. What you call my life is really just God's life living in you and through you. See, you as a human being are just a small extension of the much larger life that is God's. Your life as a human being is just a small part of a much larger story. This is why Jesus said, if you want to find your life, you must first lose your life. That's Christianity 101. You have to let go of your old identity to discover who you truly are in God. The way St. Paul says it in the book of Galatians is, those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with its passions and its desires. To crucify the flesh is to disidentify from the ego. When you come to an awareness of your ego, when you come to recognize the patterns, the reactions, the habits, the belief systems of the ego, all of those things begin to lose their power over you. Because you come to see that you are none of those things. And who you truly are at your essence is beyond thought, beyond emotion. See, I love when Jesus has this interaction with his disciples and he asks them the question, who do you say that I am? Who do you say that I am? Everybody had a different answer. Some said, you're Elijah, or you're John the Baptist, or you're one of the other prophets who have come back to bring us a message. Peter even said to Jesus, you are the Christ. But Jesus did not own up to even that title or that label. When other people called Jesus the Son of God, Jesus preferred the term Son of Man, which simply means the human one. Jesus refused to be pinned down by the perceptions that other people had of him. Jesus refused to have any identity outside of who he was in God. So to be a follower of Jesus is to let go of our false sense of self. It's to stop attaching ourselves to our own sense of self. If you want to be free, drop the labels, drop the titles, drop the persona, drop the image that you're trying to give off to other people, and instead dance as if nobody was watching. Be free. Be love. When you are attached to nothing, you then become connected to everything. And so the question for us is, how can we cultivate this connection on a daily basis? How can we maintain this connection? How can we remain in this state of detachment so that we can remain close to God every moment of every day? Well, the scriptures give us a prescription. St. Paul says in the New Testament, rejoice always, be thankful in every circumstance, and pray without ceasing. Prayer is the way that we get connected. What would happen to your mindset? What would shift about your day if you began every morning looking for reasons to thank God? This morning for me, it was my avocado toast. Thank you, God, for this awesome avocado toast and café con leche. That's something to be thankful for. If you are looking for reasons to be thankful to God, you will find those reasons all throughout the day, and they can be even the smallest of things. But just maintaining that continual conversation with God produces a shift in your consciousness. It brings you to a higher state of being, where now you are living and moving in harmony with God. Paul calls it keeping in step with the Spirit. One of the most powerful prayers that I pray, God, help me. Help me. Maybe the prayers that you pray are prayers of affirmation at any time throughout the day. God, thank you for filling me with your love. Today I choose to walk in your peace. I release all of my anxieties and cares into your hands, and I live my life in absolute dependence on you. Can you see how maintaining that kind of a state can totally bring transformation into your life and into the lives of everybody that you come across? It gets you into a different space. It gets you into that transcendent dimension that Jesus called the kingdom of heaven within, what Paul called the indwelling spirit. It's the God dimension, always accessible to us. There's nothing we need to do to get into the presence of God. All we have to do is simply become aware of it. We're already there. You're already there. Maybe if you're going throughout your day and you do something that you're ashamed of, or you recognize that you're falling back into old patterns, what would happen if instead of repeating those failures over and over in your mind, or beating yourself up for doing that thing again, what if you used those very mistakes as a gateway into God's presence? What if those moments were moments that you went to God and simply said, God, this is me. This is where I've taken a wrong turn. I receive your forgiveness. I accept your love, your unconditional love in this moment. And then move on with your life. I mean, we hold on to things so much. How beautiful of an outlet prayer provides for us to be able to release all of these things into the hands of God. And this is why centering prayer is really important too, essential to our walk with God. Because the whole point of meditation is to carry that sense of open-hearted, loving awareness into every single moment of our lives. All of our life is meant to be an extension of that one activity. When we are tapped into our true nature, when we become the awareness behind our thoughts, when we're no longer associated with the critical voice of judgment in our head, but instead we sink into the loving presence of God. This is what life is all about. And that's why we gather together as a community. The scriptures say faith comes by hearing, and hearing comes from the Word of God. And so as you hear this conversation, as you get around other people who are speaking this same God language, it fuels you. It nourishes your soul. gives you the strength to continue going. It reminds you about God, because so often we forget about God. If you're anything like me, and I think this is just most humans, isn't it true when we think about something, when we have a desire, when we have a want, isn't it true that oftentimes that desire and want tends to consume our thinking? Human beings have a tendency to become obsessive about the things that are at the forefront of their mind. If that's the case, what if instead of always being consumed in our thought life by money or success or career or sexuality, we allowed God to be the one desire that consumes our thinking? Do you see how that can realign you? It's keeping that connection, keeping that channel through prayer. And so I want to wrap up with a quick little interesting thing that I read recently this week. I was reading about Japanese tea ceremonies. Very random. But in Japan, these tea ceremonies are very sacred. And in a lot of these places where these tea ceremonies are had, you'll find all along the walls different scrolls. And these scrolls have different sayings and phrases on them. And there's one phrase that is written in a lot of these scrolls when you have these tea ceremonies. I don't know how to pronounce it in Japanese. You'll see it up on your screen now. But I know how to translate it into English. Into the English, this Japanese phrase that is all over the place, written on the scrolls as people are having this tea ceremony, this phrase means for one time only. Or another way to translate it is once in a lifetime. Once in a lifetime. The purpose of this phrase being written and being made visible during these tea ceremonies is to remind the people who are participating that this moment they are experiencing is a once in a lifetime moment. This experience right here, right now, cannot be repeated. It cannot be duplicated. Even if these same people were to gather again at the same time, at the same place to do the same thing the next day, it would still be unique and it would still be different because no one moment can be replicated. Every moment and every experience is a once in a lifetime experience. When you approach life like this, now you enjoy so much more deeply every present moment. And you walk with God moment by moment. You don't miss out on the things that God is doing, the small things oftentimes that God is doing in the very ordinary, simple things that we do in life. This attitude, this posture allows you to savor every moment, to treat it with respect, to see it as sacred. This is what it means for life to become a prayer. When this becomes your posture towards life, when you see the sacredness of every moment, when you let the past be the past, when you don't waste time projecting fear into the future, but you're fully connected to this moment, living peacefully, living mindfully, connected to what is. When you live like this, everything changes. That is when you begin to not only know intellectually about the interconnectedness of life, but you begin to truly experience that and feel that, which simply means you become transformed by love. You simply fall in love with life, every aspect of it, every moment of it, and the little things become special to you. That's my prayer, that your life would become a prayer, that you would connect yourself to the sacredness of every moment, treating every moment as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity because it is. And as you do that, God will meet you and speak to you in ways that you can't even imagine. God, we thank you that you are present to us and with us in every moment of our lives. Make us aware of your presence. Teach us to live in harmony with you. Help us to dance through life as if no one is watching, knowing that our life is a part of the much greater life that is yours, your life. This is your world. This is your story. We belong to you. May we decrease so that you may increase. May we get ourselves out of the way and remove our attachments to all of the false identities we've created for ourselves so that we can be who we truly are in you. Pray all of these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks for joining us today, everybody. Just a reminder, we cannot do what it is that we do without your love, your support, and your generosity. And so I want to ask you, if you're able to do so, and if God leads you to do so, to give. If you've been impacted by Heartway, if these messages that you're hearing are touching your heart, if you're expanding as a human being as a result of interacting with us and being a part of this community, you can show your love and support for us by giving. And so I want to point you to heartwaychurch.com. You can set up your account for recurring giving, which is the easiest way to give on an ongoing basis. But you can also give a one-time donation through heartwaychurch.com. And you can also give by texting your dollar amount to 84321. There are so many lives that have changed as a result of what it is that we're doing here at Heartway. And so thank you for being a part of that, because Heartway is not a one-man show. It's not a one-man team. We're a community, and together is how we make a difference.